Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us here at Aegis 360 Consulting in one of our 30-minute pop-up webinars. Today, we're talking about a leader's daily questions. And, you know, it's interesting. There's tons and tons of information out there about the questions that a leader should ask. There's tons of questions out there about what a leader should be and how they should go about being that kind of a leader, and the list goes on and on. And you know, much of what is written is right. I mean, it really is. And then we have things that says, you know, here's a great leader, Mother Teresa. Here's a great leader, Rosa Parks. Here's a great leader, Norman Schwarzkopf. Here's a great leader, Winston Churchill, Abe Lincoln. You know, all these people from all walks of life. And then they say, you should be like that. And I always say, well, it's a little hard. First of all, it's a lot of really different people, and I don't look like any of them in any way, shape, or form. So the bottom line is we need to really think long and hard about really what do these leaders have in common. So what I've done over the years is, it's not that I'm trying to say that what anybody else says is necessarily wrong from a leadership characteristic perspective, but I try to take things and get it down to a micro lesson. And that's what I'm going to share with you today. And we're going to turn it, instead of a bunch of answers, we're going to turn it into questions. And these are things that I've learned from people that I've worked for in the military, as well as in the civilian world, that I thought were just tremendous leaders. And then studying these other more famous folks. So the one thing that's interesting about these leaders is they ask themselves some things daily. Now, they might not do it exactly like we have it set up here. It could come in various forms and fashions. Certainly, you might do it a little bit different. But the bottom line is they're ultimately going to look at these things, and these are going to roll through their mind one way or the other. Here's something that is common among all these leaders and people that are great leaders. They're very curious about themselves. They are always interested to take a hard look in the mirror and say, who am I? What do I do? What do I do well? What do I not do so well? What could I be better at? What do I should hand off to someone else? How do I interact with others? You know, we could certainly get into a conversation of high emotional intelligence, which I happen to believe deeply in. But even just boiling it down from there, they really are willing to take a look and see what the reflection is. Let's look in the mirror. Let's look backwards. Let's see how I used to be. How am I now? How am I different from today? Or what did I look like today? So let's kind of get into what these four things are that these characteristics of great leaders are really looking at, and then we'll turn those into some questions. One of the things I find interesting that all these leaders have in common is they want to learn. They want to learn a lot, and they want to learn a lot about a lot of things. They're not narrowed into just one area. They will have hobbies. They will have interests. They will be very inquisitive. Generally speaking, they're pretty good at asking questions. They're good at making statements, but they're really good at asking questions and being inquisitive. They generally want to learn about other people. They want to learn about other topics. My dad was a voracious reader. The man read everything. He read nonstop. And he did pass his love for reading down to us in various forms and fashions. But my dad was an interesting guy that he would read just about anything. Dad hated boats. He just really didn't like him at all. And you have to understand why a little bit. When he went off to World War II, he was on a boat for almost 2 months solid. to get over to China, Burma, and India, where he was a serviceman during World War II. And then when the war was over, guess what he did? He got back on another boat and came back the other direction. And his experience on boats, let's just say they weren't the best, as you can imagine, on a troop carrying ship. And he always said, you know, I don't have any interest in boats. I don't want to own one. I don't want to go out on one. I don't want to go out on the lake. I mean, he would go if he was invited by friends who had a boat up on the lake and enjoy an afternoon. It wasn't that bad, but he didn't have any, big thing against it. But he had no interest in it at all. One day I came home and Dad was reading a sailing magazine. He'd picked it up, stole it probably from the doctor's office. I said, Dad, you don't even like boats. What are you doing? He goes, I picked it up in the doctor's office and got to reading this article. It was interesting. I wanted to finish it. So I brought it home. And he started to make comparisons about tracking into the wind. And I don't know anything about sailing myself, but he then started telling me, you know, hey, I learned this and I learned that. And it reminds us. So I come from a big aviation family. And he started making comparisons to other things that he knew about, flying being one of them and some other things. And then guess what? He threw it away. And I don't know that he ever read about another boat again the rest of his life. But the bottom line is great leaders are always trying to learn. And so they're inquisitive, they're curious, they ask questions. They want to learn a topic, they want to learn a skill, they want to learn an ability. Some are for business, some are for work, some are for fun, but they want to learn. And so they continually strive to see what else they can learn. Let's kind of go to the next piece. And that is these great leaders, one way or another, keep a promise. Now, it might not be a promise I promise to do. But if they owe you something, and we'll use the owe in almost a pejorative sense, they're going to give it to you one way or the other. I don't mean by Friday I have to make my mortgage payment. They do that as well, but that's a different kind of owe with a deadline and set amount and expectation and so on and so forth. This is the nuanced, subtler kind of owe. You'll find these leaders will do things like, hey, remember yesterday when we were talking, or last week? Yeah. Well, you know, I neglected to tell you, or I thought about it after we were done, and I wanted to complete what I talked to you about. They're always looking to complete or round out the interaction they had with somebody with more information, or their deadline, or their promise, or keeping their word, whatever that looks like to them, and usually all the above. They're really good at that. They are really good about connecting, and they're really good about saying, here's the connection and I want to follow up on it. When they can't follow up on it, guess what they're really good at? Telling you, hey, I'm sorry, I'm not going to get that done today. I know I promised it to you. It's just not going to happen. So it's really important to these leaders that they continue to connect. And this is really, really important. And they always try to make sure that they've completed the loop, so to speak. They've connected. They've said, I owe you this, and I'm going to give it to you. Now, what's really interesting to these folks is they like to pay debts that you don't even know that they have. They feel they have the debt. And that's how it will come out to them. See, that's the higher level of this owing piece. I gave you an answer, and then I thought about it, and here's an additional bit of information. Or I went and I looked something up and I found out this, and so here's this. They continue to try to round it out. At some point they're going to stop doing that with you, but what's really important is you'll find this trait kind of emerging from these leaders. So they pay debts that no one knows they owe but them. And it's a debt to them. It may not even be a debt to you. Here's another thing that great leaders do. They're constantly helping others. They're constantly saying, how can I help you? And this is a really important part of this, how can I help others piece. They celebrate in your success. They applaud your success. Whether they helped you get there or not, it doesn't matter. They certainly don't need anybody to know that they did. They're just delighted when you've been successful. When you've been successful, they feel successful, even if they had nothing to do with it. They will do things like send notes out. So I have a whole drawer in my desk, and it's filled with nothing but note cards, all kinds of different note cards. I try to put at least 2 note cards in an envelope and a stamp, the old-fashioned way, in the mail every week. I try to send out a minimum of 100 a year. Sometimes I don't get there. Sometimes, then I feel like, oh my gosh, I owe somebody a note. See, I go back to that one and they don't even know they don't know I owe them a note. And next week I'll send out 4 or 5 because I didn't have a chance to send out any. Some weeks it's just the opportunities are there and I send them out. But they're always willing to say congratulations to get to you. Now, I'm going to go back and talk about this kind of this personal connection piece, the note card piece, but it could be a phone call. It could be in person. You don't confuse this with a thumbs up on a Facebook post or a congrats on a LinkedIn post. Those are the public displays of helping or giving someone information or cheering on someone else's success, which is all comes in under that. What really is important here, and this is key, is that it's done person to person. It's not done for anyone else to see me having done it for you. I'm going to help you. I'm going to help you celebrate in your success. And whether anybody sees it or not is not important to me. That's why I don't like the social media piece. If I'm going to tell somebody happy birthday, I'm going to pick up the phone. I'm going to send them a note. I don't need to do it with a click. It's whatever. It's nice. I'm not saying it's not nice, but I think we can take it a little extra step. So these leaders were always willing to help others and then celebrate in their success, whatever that happened to look like. The fourth thing that these leaders always do is they think about their legacy and their memory and what they're leaving behind. And they think about it a little bit different. They don't just think about it in a what's going to go in their obituary or their headstone. They don't say, what do I want my legacy to be from a life standpoint? What they do is they think about their legacy on a day-to-day basis. What did I leave behind today? What did I leave behind today? A lot of times what I left behind today is something really small. It doesn't have to be big. You don't have to leave behind solving world hunger. You don't have to leave behind giving away half your earnings. You don't have to leave behind feeding all the poor, saving a life. That's not necessarily what it's about. They think about this every day, and they don't think about it. When I use the word legacy, I don't want you to think about your name on a building or those sorts of legacies, right? These leaders don't think about it like that. Sometimes it certainly will fall into that category if they have the financial ability to do those sorts of things. They think about it a little different. They think about their legacy in a micro sense, not a macro sense. You see, if you think about what you left behind today, every day, your obituary will write itself. That's what'll happen. If you think about what was your legacy today, your headstone marker will write itself. You don't have to worry about it. So I want you to start thinking about it in a macro basis. So here's what I've done. And if you see these, you want these, I have them in a little card stock. I'm be glad to mail them to you. That's fine. I'd be glad to get them to you however you'd like them. Here's the bottom line. These are the 4 questions. What did I learn about myself today? This is that piece about myself. This is that introspective piece. Now, about myself might have been, I also learned that I showed a little inquisitive today. I picked up a Hemingway book and I read an essay. I asked Bob about something and he told me about it. I walked out on the plant floor and I learned about a process. I know a CEO of a very large healthcare system, and when he first took over as CEO, he made schedules for about the first, I don't know how many months it took him, but he was very, very adamant about it. And he would change his clothes and spend a half a day with every discipline in the hospital. Housekeeping, security, the finance department, the HR department, facilities, clinicals, non-clinicals, everything. And he would work alongside them and say, show me your job. Tell me. He helped admissions people admit a patient. So when he was sitting back up in that CEO office, he had an idea what was going on. And so he learned about himself. Well, it's a job I wouldn't want to do, or that job interests me or whatever. So there's always this state of learning going on. They also ask themselves, do I owe anyone anything tomorrow? What do I owe to who tomorrow? And I want to reiterate that it may be that I owe Bob $100 on Thursday and I'm going to make sure I bring him the check. Absolutely. But this is that nuanced piece, right? This is the owe that nobody even knows you owe it. The continuation of the conversation, the completion of the answer to the question or whatever. The thank you for what you did for me yesterday. That oh, you're welcome, and didn't even think about it, right? These are these nuanced pieces. Again, this is the micro piece, not the macro piece. Did I help anyone today? And there's days you will help a lot of people, and other days you haven't helped anybody. And just know that the answer is what the answer is. And if you didn't help anybody today, maybe it just was a day that there just wasn't an opportunity. It just didn't happen to come up. Okay, fine. That doesn't mean it was a bad day in of itself, right? I'm not as worried about your answers to this as I am encouraging you to ask them. You've got to put your own value on your answers. And if you say, wow, today was a day that I didn't help anyone, that means I didn't measure up today. Well, fine, then help 2 people tomorrow or finish off helping someone tomorrow or whatever it is that you do, that is okay. Maybe it just was one of those days and you just didn't interact with anybody very much. And so the question is just, it doesn't matter. Maybe I don't even ask that question today. And then the last question, again, we're looking at this at a micro basis. That's why I say, what was today's legacy? Not my life's legacy, today's legacy. If you worry about the day's legacy, your obituary will write itself. Now, here's the other part of this last question. And am I proud of it? Dad used to say, don't do anything you don't want above the fold on the front page of the newspaper. If you don't want it up there, maybe you shouldn't be doing it. It's just kind of that, what's that compass, right? What's that guiding principle that I have, right? I mean, you can call it whatever you want, but that's where it really falls into. What was today's legacy, and am I proud of it? Now, again, I will be honest with you. There's going to be days you don't ask all 4 questions. There's going to be days some of the questions don't have answers, or they have answers you like, they have answers you don't like. You're going to have every combination out there. This is not intended to beat you up with. That's not what this is all about. This is really here for really one purpose and one purpose only, to keep you looking at what you can do to better yourself, not to say I'm great and wonderful. We're not going down that road, right? The great leaders don't do that. Great leaders don't talk about themselves very much at all. They're usually pretty understated. So if you want one of these cards, reach out to us through the website, or I'll give you my email here, and I'm glad to put them in the mail to you and let you have a bunch of them. We give them out all the time. You can put them up anywhere you like them. I have clients who have them on their desk. I have clients who have them in their cars. One client says, I want a bunch, and he kind of puts it around, and it's a passive way to kind of remind him to ask himself these questions and try to be a little better leader. So we want to thank you for being with us today. It was great. Here's my contact information, the office phone number, and we do have a YouTube channel. Please go and check it out. We put all of these on YouTube. They're available. And we've got a host of libraries up there. We try to have most of these are 30-minute pop-ups. We do have some 1-hour interview style content for you to go through. And if you have any questions, please reach out to us. And again, thanks for being here. We appreciate it.